coming towards us, and JJ Leto chasing him hard. That is the battle for fourth place.
They're repeating what we've already recorded.
I told us we have to revoice it.
Christian Van in the pits with the fire tender. And the Kramer car with that fire may have been caused by rubber debris around the track, building up around the engine bay, or some other perhaps small problem. Little puff of smoke from JJ Leto as he pushes his car very hard indeed in chase of Emanuele Pirro. And Leto and the BMW team hoping desperately to pull something back from this debacle that was their practice and qualifying. Into the pits finally comes the race leader then at the end of his 34th lap. They were thinking 32, maybe 33 laps would be their race fuel window, but it's Brabham at a standstill in the pits. There is his teammate Jan Magnussen, and Brabham's getting out. Well, that does surprise me. They're going for the full driver change as well. There's time to do this while the 100 litres of fuel, which is put in at a strictly metered rate, continues to flow into the tanks. One hose allows the fuel in, the other hose allows the air to be vented out to continue maximum fuel flow rates within the restrictors, and also to allow them to fill the fuel tank completely without spilling any. And this must seem like a very long wait for Jan Magnussen. The lead car is in, and now almost guaranteed to have surrendered the lead to Alan McNish. Halfway around the straight, the sparks from the bottom of the Audi of Emanuele Pirro as he desperately tries to fight off JJ Leto. There's a PTG BMW between them. That's the GT lead BMW, and it's a good thing for JJ Leto's BMW that he was exactly where he was, because Leto manages to sweep around the outside of Biela, and immediately Biela drops a couple of lengths away as they go past the Conrad Porsche. That GT class car has already made a early and unscheduled pit call, but now JJ Leto moves up ahead of Frank Biela into fourth place, and we wait to see how they are fixed when the number one Paynos rejoins racing. I don't think that they will have passed it, but certainly Alan McNish will have been very, very close indeed to taking the lead, if not already done so. Well, the number one car has left the pits and already back up at speed. So we've got all three of our race leaders on the racetrack at the moment. Alan McNish, formerly the leader until he called for fuel under the yellow flags, is now the race leader once more. Hiroki Kato in second place, JJ Leto in third, Emanuele Pirro in fourth. Jan Magnussen rejoins in fifth place, and he is then ahead of the North Star Cadillac of Eric Bernard, the sixth place man, and the BMW of Bill Orbelin. Tear-off strip being thrown out by JJ Leto. That's just to give him a clear visor now. The evening sun will not present too much of a problem for these drivers. A little bit hazy overhead this spring evening, 7 o'clock in Britain, and the temperature going from the air, but the tyre engineers assure me not so speedily from the racetrack. They're expecting afternoon tyre temperatures in terms of track contacts to be maintained pretty much through the first half rather than the first third of this race. Well, the major pit stops already undertaken. Mark Cole now with the Paynos back down there in sixth position. Now comes the long, long wait, perhaps even until the end of the race, when they find out whether staying out for that early yellow flag pit stop that all the other competitors in the prototype class took proves to be a good choice or a bad choice. And it's at this point in endurance racing, when you've cast your die, that you start, I'm sure, to second guess yourself.
There's no guarantee there's not going to be more safety car periods. It's in one of these extraordinary seesaw races already. We're just at the moment only just over the hour into it, and as you said, everything can be play into Paynos' hands. It can all go wrong long for. We just don't know, with another 2 hours of racing, or perhaps only 1.5 hours in these conditions. As you say, it's a beautiful late spring, early summer evening here at Silverstone. The weather forecast, it was perhaps some rain this evening, but looking at the moment, certainly it's a lovely clear sky, beautiful sunshine, people still out on the grandstands in shirt sleeves enjoying what really is the warmest day we've had this year so far, and the great racing here. And anyone who's missed this race tonight, really, I think is going to have missed one of the great classics in Britain, the chance to see American Le Mans Series, these beautiful cars coming all the way from the States, and their trucks are in the paddock. Reynolds have got their trucks all the way from Atlanta here. Quite extraordinary sight as you walk into the paddock. A really good feeling about the whole thing, and this really is so good for sports car racing this weekend. It really does put another notch into sports car racing's importance, along with the Sports Racing World Cup, the American Le Mans Series, Grand Am Series in America, and of course the Le Mans 24 Hours itself, which is the magnet for all of this racing. Everything's built around that race, and of course that's why this is the American Le Mans Series. And the Americans, Martin, love it, don't they? You're working there all year long in the series over in the American tracks. They just love the association with Le Mans.
Well, they certainly do like the Indianapolis 500. It's one of the names in motor racing that everybody knows across the world. Anybody who's interested in cars knows about Indy, and they know about Le Mans. Well, good evening and welcome to viewers on Eurosport across Europe and on British Eurosport. Joining us now, I understand that our former game plan has not quite worked, and you are not hearing our commentary from the early part of the race, which we had been reliably assured was a certainty. So I'm sorry, as you've been seeing the start of the exciting start of this race, Mark and I have been wittering on about the action that is unfolding in front of us now, and I'm rather fearful that I may just have given the game away about one or two of these early incidents. Well, as you can see, as you've been watching from the pictures, probably throwing your shoes at the screen, again, my apologies for that. The early front runner was the man who took a dominant pole position, Mimo Schiattarella, in the Raffinelli car that he will share with Didier de Radiguez, and it was the fastest car in qualifying by half a second. He did a single flying lap on his qualifying run in the afternoon, and that was enough to jump him right to the front of the grid. Well, the Paynos drivers were a little bit more worried about fuel economy and their race setup, and David Brabham didn't just continue to pound round searching for a gap and looking for that elusive pole position lap. He was quite content to start from the outside of row one. As we saw the early race unfold, it was the Italian driver in the Raffinelli car who jumped out to around a second lead from the two Paynoses. The number 2 machine started by Japanese renter driver Hiroki Kato, who, despite having a healthy sponsorship push into the drive, has produced some impressive performances and proved himself to the team and to the fans to be very much worthy of his seat in the car. Alan McNish doing the early chasing. The 77 car, the tail of this 4-car string, and Alan McNish, of course, so at home and so loved by the British fans. Scottish flags and Go Alan Go banners very numerous around the circuit in this early afternoon or early spring afternoon sunshine. The Scot right with them as the Raffinelli car leading Mimo Schiattarella, David Brabham, former F1 teammates, running first and second. Well, already just 4 laps into the race, they were catching the first of the back markers, and of course back markers bound in a 34 car field to produce an awful lot of interest, and so it will undoubtedly prove right to the end of the race. The gap between not Johnny O'Connell but Hiroki Kato, the man who started the number 2 car, and not Dindo Capello but Alan McNish, the man who started the 77 car, barely there at all. Alan McNish in 4th place in the Audi, holding on to the tail of Hiroki Kato, moving the car around in his mirrors, showing him the headlights, and Mark trying to unsettle him and just to force a mistake out of what is really, in sports car racing terms, certainly compared to a Le Mans winner like McNish, a fairly inexperienced driver in the number 2 car.
Yes, indeed. Kato really showing strongly at Paynos this year. As we've said earlier, the man bought money, but he's also brought a lot of talent. His Japanese racing, he raced in the Japanese GT Championship for BMW, he raced at Le Mans last year in the Team Go BMW. Here he is, still, as you say, relatively experienced, but McNish really pushing him, hoping he'll make him make a mistake, McNeish would just love to get this Audi further up. It's the last year's Le Mans Audi. It's not this year's car. Those cars won at Sebring. They've been saved now for the race in June, and this is the old car. So we're not really expecting to see this car up front. So McNeish is doing a very good job. He's probably flattering the car at the moment.
Well, these older cars in their last race here at Silverstone. So a little bit of history going into the books for Audi, a bit of history as well for Silverstone. This race, the 13th of May, Saturday the 13th of May, 50 years exactly to the date, the 13th, but also to the day that the first ever Formula One World Championship race was run here. Won, of course, by Froilan Gonzalez, the Pampas bull from Argentina, who will be featuring here in the Coys Historic Festival in the middle of the summer. And that race, bizarrely to modern Grand Prix fans, run on a Saturday, really kicked off the World Championship as we know it now. And from that date forward, Silverstone has, to a greater or lesser extent, been the home of the British Grand Prix. Now, for the better part of a decade, of course, it's been the home of the British Grand Prix uniquely. But since 1950, alternating with other circuits, it has always been to Silverstone that they have come back year and year again. And sports car racing here at Silverstone mark this particular spot in the calendar after the pre-qualifying weekend and a month or so before Le Mans, a traditional highlight of British racing, because it's always been the Le Mans shakedown race, and very much again that's exactly what's going on here this year.
Yes, indeed, a long and honourable history of 1,000-kilometre races, 500-kilometre races. This, though, is the first open top sports car race we've had since 1980 here. That race was won by Desiree Wilson, Alain de Cadenet in the Le Mans Lola de Cadenet, and so this really is a red letter day for Silverstone again. As you say, the jubilee of that 50 years since that first World Championship Grand Prix, also a return to open sports car racing. We have had open sports cars in Britain. They've been at Donington Park, though. Let's hope this is going to be a really set in stone date in this calendar now, as sports car racing continues to grow and grow and grow.
Open top cars, of course, giving so much more of the spirit of what's going on inside the cars, a chance for the spectators to see something perhaps that the TV cameras don't always pick up because of their low positions. Spectators in the grandstands tend to be a lot higher up, and they can see into these low-slung cars and watch the drivers at work, not just the head bobbing around in the slipstream, and watch the different styles, leaning forward, leaning back perhaps, tucking your head into the corner or remaining more upright, but also a chance to watch the hands on the wheel when the drivers are at work. And my goodness, they are working for their money now in amongst the back markers, and really a thick field of GT cars ahead of Mimo Schiattarella at this early stage. Schiattarella under pressure from David Brabham. Either side of a back marker they go. Brabham getting to Vale earlier, but Schiattarella later, harder on the brakes and on the inside line, holding on to his lead, but Brabham staking his claim to that lead position very early indeed. Cato right with him in third place. McNeish still holding on there in fourth place. And at this early stage, the second Audi, started by Emanuele Pirro in fifth, from the better of the BMWs, driven by JJ Leto. BMW Mark really struggled here in the qualifying and in the practice days, unable to find a balance. Testing at Monza last week, run in the wet, really giving them very little in terms of rewarding feedback for setting the cars up for this Silverstone circuit. And of course, this is not a feature of last year's American Le Mans Series racing at Silverstone, so very little to go on in the way of setups. I don't think local knowledge will have helped too much, but certainly Anna McNeish and David Brabham have their fair share of that, and the Paynos and Audi teams running pretty well as a result. For the Raffinelli team and for Mimo Schiattarella, no local knowledge could be claimed. You can just put that down to doing a superb job. Gabriele Raffinelli, having seen his car claim a comfortable pole position pre-race, looking very happy indeed, and really rather confident of scoring the team's second American Le Mans Series win. Schiattarella and his teammate won last year from the back of the grid in their only win so far in the championship. Well, as you can see, it's not just the leaders who come a cropper sometimes when you get into back marker traffic. Occasionally it's the back markers. The Red Bull car of Hans-Jörg Hofer going off there. He was to rejoin moments later, but that allowed the Zero car just to jump away from the number one Paynos. No respite though for the two car, Hiroki Kato in the second of the red machines, with Alan McNeish and with Emanuele Pirro right behind him in this early stage.
Well, here comes the move then. McNeish finally managed to push his way past inside Cato, gets off after Brabham now, so nice move, typical McNeish move that. Very canny Scotsman. He's also got the other of the Audis there climbing all over the back of him. So they're looking then to move further and further up the field as we continue to look at the highlights in this first hour of the 500 Ks here at Silverstone, the American Le Mans Series.
Well, perhaps better explain to viewers that, well, maybe not at this particular juncture, as you saw the zero car slowing there. Very brief camera shot of flash of red, white and green. Not so much a flash, more of a slow blur of red, white and green. That was the lead Raffinelli car slowing as he came into the complex with just a handful of laps in the books. And David Brabham then thundering across the line for the first time as race leader. Onboard cameras showed Mimo Schiattarella's body language, just pure despair, not a driver error, a mechanical problem with the Raffinelli Lola Judd. And that was a very big disappointment indeed to them. In fact, we should call it a Raffinelli team Lola Raffinelli, because Gabriele Raffinelli's team are in conjunction with Engine Developments doing their own development work on this engine. John Judd no longer saying it's a Judd, it is in fact now called a Raffinelli, so it's a Lola Raffinelli, but it, whatever, was cruising into the pits. And the undisclosed problem, Mimo Schiattarella clearly looking for some motive power. David Brabham was the second leader then in the first 10 minutes of the race. Alan McNeish, though, right with him, having got past the number 2 Paynos, lining up to try and get past the number 1 machine. Well, David Brabham with the fastest lap of the race to date at that stage, not looking to surrender that lead. The question now was, were the number 1 car and the number 77 car going to act as hares? Well, I'm afraid that seems highly unlikely. Brabham not one to want to break the opposition so somebody else can win in his team. I'm sure Alan McNeish wouldn't want to do that in Britain either. But for the runaway pole position holder and the early race leader, it was time to come into the pits for Mimo Schiattarella. Trouble in the pits. The early race leader of the Silverstone 500, round 3 of the European Le Mans Series, Mimo Schiattarella, and his body language showing just how disappointed he was. Teammate Didier de Radiguez looking even more crestfallen in the back of the garage. Mechanical problems for the zero car, but that had handed the lead to the number 1 machine, David Brabham, in the Paynos that started on the outside of the front row of the grid. He was not alone. Alan McNeish in the Audi, starting very well up the order in 4th position in the 98 spec Audi in its last race, was chasing him hard. Well, early problems for Stefan Johansson in his Reynard Judd, the Johansson Matthews car spinning off and finding itself stranded. Johansson sitting there waiting for some assistance from the marshals. Yellow flags at the corner there, the exit to the Vale. The marshals waiting until all the traffic has gone back before they try and push the Swede. And here is where it happens, loses control and spins out, compounds that by then driving forward into the gravel. Well, as that was happening, the lead was about to change. David Brabham coming into Beckett's behind a group of slower cars, held up by a PTG BMW unintentionally. Brabham just simply chose the wrong hole to go for. It closed on him, and one opened around the outside for Alan McNeish. The Scot watching his mirrors, though, all the way down the hanger straight. Looks one way, then the other as Brabham feints and tries to dive for the inside into Stowe, but it's no dice. The Scots got it covered. McNeish survives what could have been a very close challenge indeed if he hadn't been hyper aware. The Audi out front. This is history for the Audi, the last race for this car. McNeish wants to go out with a win. He was denied at Sebring, he was denied in the second race of the championship at Charlotte. He does not want to be denied a third win in a third chance for a win in a row. And Alan McNeish desperate to stay out front now ahead of David Brabham. There in the number 2 machine, Hiroki Kato spinning as he comes out of Copse. Well, very close indeed to the tail of Brabham. Maybe a small wobble by Brabham going in. A small lift for some reason as he didn't quite negotiate traffic. But whatever it was, Hiroki Kato had to get off the throttle and onto the brakes, spun away his 3rd place. Past him went the BMW. By the time he rejoined, Hiroki Kato was down in 5th spot. Such was the fierceness of the opening squabble. Here again, you see the Japanese halfway through the corner, lift off, and then lock up as he brakes to try and slow the car down once he knows he's lost it. Well, Rocky, as the team know him, straight into the pits after that for a new set of tyres. Those were useless, round for most of their perimeter, and then completely flat. Alan McNish then, the race leader. Well, Mark, at this stage, already by the first dozen or so laps, we were wondering quite how the fuel situation would work out, because like every endurance race, there is always the question over fuel, and with this race being perhaps closer to 3 hours than the normal 2 hours 45 endurance of the American Le Mans Series events because of its 500-kilometre nature, rather than a timed 2 hours 45 race, it looks as though the cars in the prototype class, which are normally marginal anyway, almost certain to need more than 2 stops to get them through.
Yes, indeed, and that's really going to come up at 31 laps, but then this happened. Bill Albelin spins off. In fact, we think he had a collision with Mark Goossens in the Cadillac, which was also stranded. That then brought out the safety car. There it is. And of course, this all played straight into the hands of Panos, who are the masters of manipulating fuel in these races. McNish and co, are they going to head for the pits, or are they going to stay out? This was further drama unfolding here at Silverstone very, very early in the race. And as Martin said, this playing with the cards of fuel, so important. Safety car really helping David Brabham.
Safety car scrambled some 10 laps before the Panos team were expected to come in. It was really much too early for the Panos team. They had said before the race that no matter what happened with safety cars, they would stick rigidly to their fuel schedule for the first 2 stops, use every drop of fuel in the tank, whether they had to stop under green or not. But yellow flag pit stops were certainly the order of the day for most of the drivers. Bill Albelin coming in there with a left rear puncture and an all-star Cadillac car of Mark Goossens. Probably it was inside for the BMW and outside for the Cadillac. Certainly the Cadillac went off further. It may just be that Goossens was the nose of Goossens' car touched the tail of the BMW. Whatever, Albelin was certainly in the gravel there too. He had a puncture. He got back to the pits much quicker though. And the Dams driver had already bailed out of his car. He was then persuaded to go back by the marshals, because of course under European regulations, normally once you get in the gravel, that's it. But in the American Le Mans Series, they do at least make an effort to rescue serviceable cars and get them back out. Well, as Albelin left, the leaders were in. Alan McNish, the race leader, coming in for fuel. This at least 8 laps early, maybe nearly 10 laps earlier than some of the cars would stop. But Alan McNish was saying pre-race that the Audi probably only going to make 30 or maybe 31 laps on fuel. So this was for them just 6 laps before they would have expected to stop, maybe 7. And that means not too much of a deficit. Well, 4 of the top 5 cars, both Audis, both BMWs came in. The number 2 Panos had already stopped and taken on fuel with new tyres. It was the number 1 car now that was out on its own. Panos had cast their die. Brabham was staying out until his fuel was all used up, no matter what else happened on the track. They were going to go and then take their chances in the 3rd and final stint on hoping to find a yellow, hoping to find a safety car situation or something that would get them through to the end without a splash and dash. The people who have stopped already, unless they get another long safety car period, will certainly have to make 2 more stops. For Brabham, the cards are stacked. How it shakes out is entirely in the hands of the gods. And for Panos, sticking to their fuel schedule is what they're all about. In came then Goossens, the Belgian driver, back into the Dams Cadillac. And the team having a good look around the car, checking for damage. Not allowed to work on the car until the fuel has gone in. No tyre changes, no other work at all. Not even taking debris out of radiators is permitted. Only tyre men will be allowed to take temperatures, and even they are not allowed to touch the car. So the fuel hose is on, off they come, and the tyre change. Well, David Brabham at this stage out front, and Mark, as everybody else rejoined, you can see the 0 car there behind as the safety car lights go off, but he was already a couple of laps down. Everybody else at the tail of the field, and this was a prime chance for David Brabham to open up a massive advantage before he was forced to come in for fuel. Well, we'll rejoin Silverstone's racing live in just a moment. Stay with us.
We're live at Silverstone. This is lap 50 of round 3 of the American Le Mans Series here at the British circuit, bringing American racing into the heart of Europe. And you are looking at the overhead scene at the moment. Dusk just starting to fall now, but a beautiful summer's evening. I'm Mark Cole. Martin Haven's with me. Martin, what's been happening in the race since we showed the highlights?
Well, what hasn't been happening, it's been a race of multiple fortunes for the 3 cars that have held the lead. It started with the pole position man, Mimo Schiattarella, in the Raffinelli Lola. He had a mechanical problem after just half a dozen laps out front as he was establishing himself a second or two ahead of a fierce 4-way battle for second place. David Brabham took up the running from Alan McNish. Alan McNish passed Brabham in traffic. Brabham passed McNish back in traffic and then stayed out as the safety car came out after some 23 laps of the race, long before the pit windows for the prototype cars were expected to open after a clash, we believe, between the BMW of Bill Oberlin and the Dams Cadillac of Mark Goossens, the Belgian driver. Well, it was out for some 4 or 5 laps while those 2 cars were removed by the marshals from the gravel and sent back on their way. And in that interim, 4 of the top 5 cars, both BMWs and both of the Audis, stopped for fuel. Hiroki Kato in the number 2, Panos, had already spun away his first set of tyres and had stopped early for fuel. He's now back in the pits right at this moment from his 3rd position. He is so off the fuel schedule that he may end up even winning this one if they get a bizarre turn up in the final third of the race. But the number 1 car, David Brabham, stayed out. It stayed out, as was their plan all the way along, not just to lead race laps. There are no points for that in the American Le Mans Series, unlike Winston Cup NASCAR racing, but to eke its fuel out, to empty its tanks until he was running on fumes before they came in. And they were quite happy to take a green flag pit stop if everybody else stopped under yellow early, rather than compromise their ability to finish the race. And as it was, David Brabham managed not 32, not the 33 that they'd hoped for, but a magnificent 34 laps on his full tank of fuel. If Jan Magnussen can manage that in his current 2nd stint in the car, or even 33, then they will go to the end of the race with just 1 more stop. Here is the 2 car then. Hiroki Kato has handed over to his teammate, and that means that it's the first time behind the wheel for Johnny O'Connell, the American driver, now with just half the race ahead of him, but certainly 1 more stop will be needed for that car.
Well, just interesting, Martin, as they flashed up the driver change, we saw Kato actually run a 1:40, his best lap. So that was really on the pace of Schiattarella, who unfortunately has retired. That Raffinelli Lola has been retired now. They had a lot of problems earlier in the race. They came back in and they've now fallen way back, 10 laps behind. The car is apparently out of the race. We saw it being pushed into the garages. That really means now everything's falling back into the hands of McNish. Leto in 2nd place in that BMW. So we've got an Audi BMW fight on our hands again, which is exactly what we had at Sebring. It's exactly what we had in Charlotte, and history is repeating itself here, perhaps this afternoon in Silverstone. But Martin, we've said it before, we'll say it again, this really is a warm-up for Le Mans, although BMW itself won't be there.
Well, BMW won't be there, and we won't see these Audis here either. We'd see the brand new 2000 car, which is, by anybody's standards, a big leap forward from this car. The driver's really quite miffed at having to test the new car and to race the old sledge, but that is very much part of Audi's plan. The plans for Le Mans 2000 were set in stone long before they decided they would do the American Le Mans Series 2000 at the request of Audi North America. So the 98 cars wheeled out in a parallel program to race at the Charlotte race and also here at Silverstone. So this is their final appearance. The next race in the American Le Mans Series is post-Le Mans, and that will be at the Nürburgring in July. And they will be racing the new cars there and for the rest of the championship. But a little bit annoying really for any race driver to know you've got a quicker car at home in the garage and have to race something that is pretty much inferior in all departments. However, for the records, this is its last race, and Alan McNish currently leading it. So it looks as though maybe there's life in the old dog yet, Mark.
Not only that, of course, Alan McNish was fastest 2 weeks ago in the Le Mans test. He ran a 3-minute 36.6 lap, unofficially, of course, because timing wasn't allowed, the FIA said. But McNish quicker than his own teammate Manuel Pirro by almost 0.6 of a second. That really was a strong showing in the new car, as he said. So McNish really man of the moment, fastest in the Le Mans test as they head towards the great race in a month's time, and leading here the afternoon. Here we are in the Audi pits. They're waiting then to bring in, is it McNeish or will it be the other car?
Well, it shouldn't be yet, theoretically, because you would expect them to be running until about lap 60 on their fuel, or maybe even lap 62. But don't forget that the Audis, like most of the others, came in some 10 laps earlier. They came in on lap 23. There's now 53 laps done by the leader, and Alan McNeish is on the 54th lap. That means 31 laps for this car. And before the race, Alan was suggesting to me that that was probably where it was going to run dry after 31. Now, McNeish, like David Brabham, his opposite number in the number 1 Paynos, is very, very economical with his fuel. He can run fast and still stop the engine slurping too much out of the tanks. But the Audi team are definitely poised. Reinhold Jost's men, very, very well drilled, of course. They're out in the pit roads. They've got their tyres ready. The question is, will McNeish now turn sharp right here, or not quite so sharp right? Is he coming into the pits at the end of lap 53, in other words, after 31 laps on his fuel, or no, he continues on to 32 laps on his fuel? Now, that is exactly what Audi need. Really what Paynos, I'm sure, are hoping not to see. Like all the other teams down the pit roads, Audi, Paynos, BMWs, all the others will be not only noting when their cars come in, but when everybody else comes in and how much fuel they use. And they will be hoping to predict how much of a cushion or otherwise they have got in hand as we come towards the closing stages of the race. But McNeish now continues round for one more lap, and I think perhaps that may just be it. It's on lap 54 now, so there is the result at the end of the 53rd lap. McNeish leading by 3 from JJ Leto. Those are his headlights, you can see glaring halfway down the Hanger Straight as McNeish turns into Stowe. So McNeish by no means in a comfortable lead, but don't forget, McNeish, the race leader, and JJ Leto, the second place man, stopped at the same time. So did Emanuele Pirro, the third place man, and that will leave Jan Magnussen in the fourth placed number 1 Paynos as the man at the moment who does not need to stop for at least another 10 laps. So that means that once we see the leaders start to peel off into the pits, the top 3 will disappear and the number 1 car will be restituted to its lead position. Now, how that will shake out again after 2 more pit stops by the top 3 and possibly 1 more by the Paynos team remains to be seen. But of course, Mark, that is so much of the art and the joy of sports car racing, is it is a guess and a gamble for us spectators right the way to the end, pretty much as much it is for the teams.
Absolutely. We just in fact caught a glimpse of probably Frank Bieler standing in the pit garage down there, so maybe Frank is going to take over that other car, the car he's showing with Pirro. Michele Alboreto having dropped out. He was entered, he was going to run this weekend, but he decided to stand down, exactly what he did at Sebring. He suddenly decided he's not really competitive enough and is taking a couple of steps backwards. But just looking down the order at the moment, what we haven't seen in a long time is what's happening in GTS. Carl Wendlinger is on board the Oreca Viper from Tommy Archer. Those two are 1-2 at the moment in 9th and 10th places overall in GTS, and right behind them in 12th place overall, Bob Wallick. Great drive there in the GT and these incredibly noisy 996 GT3Rs, the noisiest Porsches ever built. And Bob Wallick, driving of Sasha Masters, doing a great job, as we say, 12th overall to lead GT. Behind them, everyone else stacked up, Conrad, Rice, Cunningham, Fister, the Chamberlain Vipers, still running hard there. Stefan Ortelli, by the way, in the number 49 car. He's sharing with Kaufman. Good job there. They're right up, right behind the 2 Oreca Vipers. There's a big battle going on in that category, although at this moment Ortelli has fallen 1 lap behind Wendlinger, and Archer indeed in 2nd place is 1 lap behind Wendlinger as well. So Oreca doing another of their steamroller jobs here. They have run since the beginning of 1999. They've had 21 races, 20 of which they have won, and that speaks volumes. Pit stop time, Martin.
Well, here we go. This is the first of the BMWs to come in, which means JJ Leto will continue for 1 more lap. Bill Auberlin you saw getting out there and handing over the controls of the car to the man who did this afternoon's qualifying stint, Jean-Marc Gounon. And the Frenchman will do the middle stints. Now, don't forget that these cars, as the 42 car comes in from 2nd position, JJ Leto, have already done a full stint and 2/3 on their tyres. BMW cannot double stint their tyres, according to Michelin. Audi can, Paynos can. But don't forget, Audi are not going to do a double stint because they've already done a full stint and 20 plus laps on their tyres. So it'll be driver change, fuel fill-up and a 4-tyre change for the BMWs. This is going to be a full service pit stop. JJ Leto gets out, hands over his car.
They were not expecting him. The tyres were not ready. They were not expecting him that quickly. They got really caught by surprise there. You could see that as the car came in.
Well, BMW obviously trying to give both of their cars maximum opportunity, keeping the 43 car out of Bill Oberlin as long as possible. Don't forget, Oberlin had that unscheduled pit stop because of his puncture. He's lost the laps, and I have to say that is a tactical error. They should have brought in JJ Leto as their absolute priority when he needed it, and left Bill Oberlin to fend for himself. Oberlin is no longer in contention. JJ Leto certainly was, but as you say, Mark, 2 cars arriving within half a lap of each other is a disaster for the BMW team, and we've seen Charlie Lamb, well-drilled Schnitzer operation, caught out on pit-stop tactics 2 or 3 times in the American Le Mans Series, 99 and 2000. Well, not so much 2000, but 99, and it looks as though they may just have had their attention on the wrong ball when they should have been watching the car that was in contention. Here is our race leader, though, Alan McNish. 56 laps down now. McNish goes round once more, and this is going to be very, very important. Every single lap he can continue out there for Audi before the end of this race, because McNish is building himself a hope that he may not have to be in a desperate situation at the end of the race. Of course, coming in early, though, they are committing themselves to 2 stops and a splash. What he's trying to mitigate against is how long that splash will be. The more laps he can do now, the less fuel he'll need late in the race.
We have our GTS leader in the pits at the moment, Carl Wendlinger, making the team's 2nd stop. In fact, none of the other GTS cars have made a 2nd stop yet, so they're obviously hedging their fuel plans as well. They're in the pits at the moment, still refueling the car. You don't see it at this moment, but they're just about to reach the back. Out he goes, even as we say that. So Wendlinger maintains his lead, a 1-lap lead over Tommy Archer there.
Well, no surprise to see the Oreca Vipers a lap ahead of everybody else, and really perhaps no surprise to see the Wendlinger and Beretta car faring better than the 2 American drivers, Archer and Donoghue. No disrespect to their abilities, but it's quite clear that the Oreca team circulates around, well, not even Carl Wendlinger, but Olivier Beretta. He is their absolute #1 driver, and everything they do is planned around the 91 car. Into the pits comes the 78 Audi. Now, that car was in 4th place, Emanuele Pirro. He comes into the pits. Jörg Müller was being shown on the timing screens in 3rd place. He drops down to 4th place, and he has just gone across the line. Alan McNish still out there. Now you can see the yellow helmet running round, Frank Wieler with his seat ready to get in. And Italian driver Emanuele Pirro takes out his body form seat, and in gets Wieler. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're only allowed to refuel the car. Nobody else may touch the car. The single exception is the driver change. The drivers may help each other. No other crew member may be involved. Incidentally, coming up right behind them, the camera pans round, Alan McNish will pull in front, race leader in the pits. This is going to be critical for Audi. They must get every single drop of fuel in. Out gets McNish, in will get Dindo Capello, the Italian who he shares the car with. McNish then in the pits. This is the Audi team's 2nd stop. And again, it is going to be full tyres all round, because they have done some 58 laps in McNish's case on that set of tyres, and that is just enough.
Martin, just noticing, just before McNish stopped, Jan Magnussen and Johnny O'Connell, fastest men on the track at the moment, 1:43s. And those 2 cars, much quicker pace than McNish, 2 seconds faster on that last lap. Here indeed is Magnussen as he moves into the lead at the end of this lap.
He will take the lead as he comes across the line, because Alan McNish will, or in fact Dindo Capello will still be stationary, taking fuel and tyres on board. And here is the view inside the Brabham Magnussen car. Jan Magnussen, the Dane, at the wheel, of course. On the right-hand side, you can see the lateral G. That's either brake or acceleration. And the speed on the left-hand bar there, rising, rising, rising. Don't be confused. That's not puny kilometres an hour. That is proper miles an hour, over 150 miles an hour there, coming down towards Beckett. And of course, on the top of the screen, you saw there the G loadings. They're pulling up to 2.5 G in the tighter corners here at Silverstone, and in the long, fast sweepers as well. So it's a pretty physical racetrack. And at the moment, it is the #1 Paynos that leads. Jan Magnussen at the wheel as they continue to motor around Silverstone in a little world of their own. Jan Magnussen leads with nearly 60 laps out of the 98-lap race distance already run of the American Le Mans Series, the first ever European Le Mans Series race, the Silverstone 500 USA Challenge. Drawing breath. Well, what a race of incident and accident we've had already. It's been a battle of wits and nerves in traffic, among the back markers, in the high-speed sweepers of Silverstone, but also on calculators, on the charts, in the pits, because the Paynos team, the number one car out front by a country mile, Mark, because not just of its speed, but because of its fuel strategy. We've just seen its top four rivals, the two BMWs, the two Audis, stopped for fuel because they came in after 23 laps of the race under yellow flags to make their first unscheduled pit stops, whereas Paynos stuck rigidly to their fuel strategy. Now, we've seen Porsche win and various other manufacturers win Le Mans races and other sports car races by sticking rigidly to what they expect to do in terms of fuel. Paynos, it seems, are going to do that as well, try to eke out their fuel into their hoped-for final stint in the anticipation perhaps of a later yellow flag when cars and drivers get tired and the chance not to have to make a splash and dash at the end of the race. But the other four cars, particularly the two BMWs and two Audis that most concern the Paynos car at the moment, they've already thrown their dice and they are committed to at least one more fuel stop and possibly a splash later on. This is going to be a thriller.
Well, Magnussen, obviously fastest man on the track at the moment, 1:42.5, but he's got a lighter fuel load, of course, now than the others have. He's still got to make his stop to stay. But Muller also doing a good job there. Jörg Muller right on the pace. He's also doing 42. It's slightly slower than Magnussen, only just though, but the rest of the field, 43s, 44s as they go down through. And it's getting closer and closer. Johnny O'Connell's just moved up into third place now in the Paynos. It's the Paynos at 1-3 at the moment as we go on board with Magnussen.
Well, Magnussen with just 10 laps or so of fuel left, and of course the cars that are chasing him now with brimming tanks. They've only done a couple of laps since their fuel stops, so the fact that they are lapping just a tenth or so off his pace shows that they are really pushing him hard. Magnussen really needs to be working very hard indeed now to give himself, or possibly David Brabham when he takes over, the best possible opportunity. Now, Brabham made 34 laps on his opening tank of fuel, whereas Paynos were hoping for 32, possibly for 33. They don't believe that Magnussen can do that. They reckon that he will be maybe a 31 lap stint, which will still give them a total of 65 laps out of 98, which means that Brabham, if he can eke out 34 laps on his final tank of fuel, will run dry as he takes the checkered flag. Mark, that's the kind of gambling to the outright limits of your abilities that is the norm in sports car racing. And if it works that way, then they win the dice game, but if they miss it by just a single lap on Magnussen's fuel window, if he comes in one lap earlier than that 31 laps, then they're in deep trouble. They'll run out a lap before the end.
Yeah, but remember that David Brabham ran 3 of those laps behind the safety car, so that's what they really need. They're now looking for another safety car this afternoon. There's plenty of gravel around here, plenty of beach to play on. If someone can do that, that'll fall right into their hands, and the race will be as good as won if they've got the reliability they've been showing in recent times.
Very good point indeed. I'd completely forgotten, of course, that they use about a third of the normal amount of fuel every lap they follow the safety car. So in effect, one of his 34 laps was free, courtesy of the safety car. So a point well made, and that means that not only did they lose a little bit of time in their green flag fuel stop, but they also are not going to make it 34 laps. So Magnussen needs to stay out for at least 32, and that may be a tall order. We just saw the GTS class leader. Here he is, the 91 car. You saw the running order there on the screen a moment or two ago. Carl Benninger taking over the car and handing it back then to Olivier Beretta. They've made 2 stops already, and it looks as though it's going to be splash and dash time for the GTS class as well. They didn't think they could make it all the way on 2 stops in regular 2-hour 45 American Le Mans races. They are pretty marginal on that, and it looks as though the GT class, which normally only makes 1 stop, will not be able to do that here at Silverstone either. So everybody really looking for just a bit more fuel than they have actually got to finish this race the way they'd like to.
What a story this car has been, of course, the record Viper GTSRs, as we said, since the beginning of last year. 21 races, 20 of which they won. The only time they were beaten was at Homestead last year in the FI GT race by the Belmondo team, and of course that was all for Viper, so it has been a clean sheet for this team. What a wonderful car, V10, 8 litre. They won't give away the horsepower, but even though it's in effect a GT2 car, we're really looking at something like 580 brake horsepower with the restrictors. They play that one very close to their chest, but this really is the car to have. If you're not going to win in this car, then a Privateer Viper is always waiting there. But this afternoon, that number 49 car of Stefan Ortelli and Wolfgang Kaufmann, the Freisinger car, that is really keeping pace with them. It's ahead of all the other Vipers for a change, so that's looking quite good at the moment for a podium, certainly for Porsche. Maybe if there's a problem for one of the Oreca Vipers, that could move him up further up the order.
In fact, Stefan Ortelli has just this moment come into the pits, and so he and Wolfgang Kaufmann taking on another full set of fuel. Here is the number 2 Paynos chasing the 77 car. Well, this is positions reversed from the early stages of the race when Alan McNish was piling on the pressure on Japanese Hiroki Kato. Now it's the American Johnny O'Connell who is piling the pressure on the 77 Audi, and it's Dindo Capello, the Italian, who is taking it. 0.3 of a second at the line the last time. That's not much of an advantage in anybody's racing. Jan Magnussen with a much more comfortable cushion, 12.3 seconds at the line. He's 32 seconds ahead of third place man Dindo Capello. This battle for third place is as close as you like, but certainly not going to affect the leaders until the number 1 Paynos comes into the pits. Then we may expect to see him, well, probably just behind or right in the middle of this battle. And we'll see then how the number 2 and number 1 gentleman's agreement, if there is one, sorts itself out. The 2 car, courtesy of an early spin by Hiroki Kato, is off the fuel schedule of anybody else, never mind its team sister car, the number 1 machine. But as you can see here, Johnny O'Connell at the end of the hanger straight going into stone, not making an overtaking attempt there, but pulling right over to show the nose of his car to Dindo Capello, exactly what Alan McNish was doing in the same Audi to the same Paynos in the early stages of the race, moving around behind him. These bright headlamps really reflecting in the driver's peripheral vision in the mirrors, making him draw his attention away from trackside markers in the hope of producing something like that, a spin. Well, that's not necessarily a fresher spin for position. There's the 17 SMG car of Philippe Gache and Gary Formato, the French-South African driving combination. That's a Courage with a Judd V10, and he's thankfully gathered it up before this battle arrives.
Yes, both those Courages, by the way, running in Le Mans trim very strictly. They've done all their testing. They didn't want to alter the car setup. Next time you see them, you'll see the wings are incredibly low and flat. Gary Formato just had the spin there. Of course, he won at Monza just 3 weeks ago in the Sports Racing World Cup. He and Maribaldi and the R&M Riley and Scott. So Gary Formato really on a roller this year. Very, very experienced driver now. Has had 2 wins in the Sports Racing World Cup, and he's going to have a crack with Philippe Gache at the Le Mans 24 Hours, and they'll use that car for the rest of the year in either ALMS or in the Sports Racing World Cup.
Of course, this traditionally a shakedown for Le Mans, this Silverstone 6 hours, the Silverstone 1,000 kilometres, and as we are currently the Silverstone 500 USA Challenge. Race 3 in the American Le Mans Series. Race 1, Sebring fell to Audi. Race 2 at Charlotte fell to BMW. Are we going to see a second repeat winner, or Paynos perhaps putting their name on a trophy for the first time this season as the race winners? Well, it's the number 1 car that leads. This is the battle we are looking at now, the 77 Audi and the 2 Paynos. That's the battle for third place, but there's the 1 car that leads. Jan Magnussen, I think, now conserving fuel rather than pushing his pace. His last lap, 1:43.3. Jörg Müller in the BMW with more fuel aboard, at least 10 laps more fuel, don't forget, 1:42.3, so exactly a second quicker, and the gap is coming down by a second and more every lap, first to second. Magnussen now leading by 11.5 from Müller as he crosses the line. It goes, as Jörg Müller comes out of the complex, it goes down again, and that means that Magnussen, I'm sure now, is trying desperately to stretch his fuel to make sure that they do not come up a lap or 2 short at the end of the race, having put their cards on the table, nailed their colours to the mast by eschewing an early yellow opportunity for a quick pit stop behind the full course yellow of the safety car from that early incident. They have laid out their markers, and there's no going back now. They're firmly committed. They can't now go back and maybe take that early pit stop because it's no longer open to them. so they have to make their fuel last. The others, of course, on a very different strategy. Quite how they are going to work this out before the end of the race. Certain fact is that neither the second place BMW, the third place Audi, the fourth place Paynos, the fifth place car, the 31 machine, which is the Dams Lola of Eric Werner and Manuel Collard, they can't go through either because they stopped under yellow, nor can the sixth place Audi of Frank Wieler. All of the chasing 5 cars stopped early under yellow, which has committed them to a third pit stop, absolutely guaranteed. The number 1 Paynos that leads the race is the only car that has a chance of making it on 2.
So looking back from Frank Wieler, looking back at BMW right up under his tail now. Great shots here from the rear of the Audi. Powering around Silverstone, under bridge, tremendous compression there as they go through back dip. This, in Formula 1 terms, is now one of the most fearsome of all corners. Comparable with Eau Rouge at Spa, the Formula 1 drivers now say. Great shot on borders, plowed down through there. So they went out to 7th. This is Capello here. We're looking at Capello, in fact, still being chased by Johnny O'Connell. Both very, very experienced men. Johnny O'Connell, 37 years old. He's done a lot of hard work. He won Sebring in 1994 for Nissan. This year he's been running Sebring. He had a retirement. Charlotte, he was 5th, whereas Dindo Capello really made his name in touring car racing. He's 35 years old, and he was 2nd at Sebring this year. Great 1-2 for Audi. So these two drivers really both at the height of their sports car careers now, very evenly matched, and that's reflected in this on-track battle here.
Race leader Jan Magnussen on his 67th lap now. 34 laps for David Brabham, now 33 at the end of this one for Jan Magnussen. So he's done what the Paynos team at 32 on this one. He's still leading, and now by nearly 14.5 seconds as Jörg Müller got held up badly there by the third place battle. More action in a moment. Drama unfolding here at Silverstone. The race leader, Jan Magnussen, has done his job coming into the pits on lap 66 of the race. He did his 32 laps, and that's what the team really needed from him. David Brabham doing 34 in the opening stint. The race leader coming to a halt. Out gets the Dane, in gets the Australian, and now it seems as though Paynos may just squeeze through to the end of this race without a further pit stop. None of their 5 main prototype class rivals can do that. Here is the race leader, Jörg Müller, in the 42 BMW. Don't forget, this is the car, I was going to say this is the car that spun off earlier and brought out the early yellow, but in fact it's not. That was the car of Bill Orville, the 43 machine. The 42 car, though, has dropped several seconds to the race leader in the last few laps, getting held up behind the battle between Johnny O'Connell and Dindo Capello in the Paynos number 2 in the Audi for second place. It took him a long while to get by that battle, and Jörg Müller is now safely passed. He is our race leader. 68 laps he has done, and he is coming round now at the end of lap 69 of 98. Well, that means that there is no way that this car, the second-placed Paynos, the third-placed Audi, or the fifth-placed Dams Cadillac, or the 6th place Audi can make it to the end of the race without a fuel stop. The only car that possibly could is the one that has David Brabham at the wheel. He's just thundered across the line at the end of his first lap out of the pits with another brimming set, full set of tyres and another brimming tank full of fuel. Well, this is a big gamble now. Paynos have stuck to their fuel schedule, and what they really, really don't need is a long yellow flag in this last period of the race, because then all their edge-of-the-seat gambling on fuel will be to naught, because everybody else can save fuel and come in for their final pit stops under yellow, and so not just once but twice in this race have quicker pit stops than the Paynos number 1 machine, which both times has stopped under green. So for the Paynos car, the die is cast for the 42 machine of Jörg Müller. Now it is playing catch-up. He just has to drive as flat out as possible, and as a result, he will be with the wick fully turned up. A chance now to look back and see the move that Jörg Müller put in. Dindo Capello, the man in his mirrors, or in his sights rather, and Capello holding on in the Audi. Don't forget, this is not a lapping move, that is for race position. And here again, your race leader, Jörg Müller, the 42 car, once more working his way through heavy traffic. The 08 car one of the few GTS Porsches, fewer and fewer in number now in the 2000 American Le Mans Series, after the Chrysler stroke Dodge Vipers dominated so heavily in '99. The GTS Porsche really a thing of the past. Well, this is the first view of Silverstone for an awful number of the American Le Mans contingent. A lot of them will have seen it in Grand Prix racing in the middle of the night or early hours of the morning. They're dedicated motorsport fans just like the rest of us. But for a large number of them, the drivers, the team members, the press contingent, this is a first-time glimpse of a historic circuit. And, well, let's speak to the one of them and have a chance to get his impressions. Mark, who have we got with us?
Well, we've got Janus Wimpfen, the American writer, broadcaster, journalist, Mr. Sports Car Racing in the United States. Now, Janus, not your first time at Silverstone probably, but first time you've been here with the sports cars.
It is the first time for this particular series, for me, for the series as well. And I was here about 10 years ago, when back in the Group C days, and had the pleasure of a ride around in Richard Lloyd's 956. It's quite a circuit. Certainly the facilities here are much better than in many circuits in the United States. And I think it's a really fit place to introduce this series to Europe.
Now, you all came over perhaps expecting to see something like the Somme here after the problems 3 weeks ago during the Grand Prix, but it's recovered remarkably well, hasn't it?
Right, sunny England it is indeed. One was not expecting this, especially since I come from the Northwest, where we're more used to the kind of weather which you had at the British Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago.
So, Janus, is there a future for bringing American racing like this to other countries? You know, we're perhaps going to see it with the Indy Cars, the Champ Car Series, bringing races to Germany, to Britain, and what about this, bringing more American sports car racing to Europe?
Well, I think probably the greatest blessing with this particular series is that it really personifies what sports car racing should be all about. There's a good mix of cars, from the factory teams up at the top down to rank amateurs at the bottom, and it's the real democratic mix that one sees with world-class sports car racing. So we're seeing that coming back to, strangely enough, coming back to Europe, which is after all the original home of this type of racing, and now it seems to have consolidated itself in this particular series. It's nice to see the series in Europe for a change.
Now, Janus, you speak of authority. You've just produced the most wonderful book, Time in Two Seats, the history of sports car racing, and this has already become the industry standard, the industry bible, and of course these races are going to be appearing in future editions, aren't they?
That's correct. I'm now doing a biennial rather than an annual update to the Time in Two Seats, which is itself is a 2-volume set that covers the history of this particular type of racing going back to 1953. It covers 600 some odd races that somehow counted for the World Championship of Sports Cars. And of course that situation has been somewhat complicated in the last few years, now that we have 3 or 4 series competing for that title of being the top World Championship race. The book does indeed cover all those races and has complete results tables, lots of photos, 2 volumes and about 2,300 pages, so it's an extensive work indeed.
Janus, thank you very much for joining us. We'll get back to the racing. Martin will take us through what's been happening just over the last couple of minutes. We saw some of the GT pit stops there, and Muller still leading. Here he is, held up a little bit by traffic at the moment. Martin.
Well, from BMW to BMW, thank you very much indeed, Janus. Delighted to be able to invite our colleagues from the American Le Mans Series here over to Silverstone and give them some great weather. They always treat us to fabulous weather in our North American sojourns, and nice to have some hot weather here for them as well. The BMW in the pits, the number 10 car, that's one of Tom Milner's PTG machines. These are the new-shaped BMW M3 racers that are taking on the might of the Porsche factory in the GT class. The 10 car, the Peter and Brian Cunningham run car, that was second and still remains second in the GT class. The GT class still being led by the 51 car. That's Sasha Masson at the helm of that machine. That's Dick Barber Racing's second car, Sasha Masson sharing with Bob Wallach. And the first car, the number 5 machine, which is normally the team leader, Dirk Muller and Lucas Luhr, the 2 young guns that the Porsche factory has placed in the team in the championship. They picked up a punch-up very early on indeed in the opening stage of the race, inside the first 12 or 15 minutes, I think, and so they are running a long way down the order. But Porsche still ruling the GT class, and the BMW, well, this is the second of the new-shape M3s. It's now dropped to 4th in class, behind Randy Pobst and Kurt Wagner, the reigning champion, both of whom are in Porsches, after that fuel stop. But again, as we said earlier, the GT class normally a one-stop race for them, and they're back up onto a two-stop strategy. The GTS class, normally a two-stop race, they're on a three-stop race. And that brings us back, of course, to fuel and to the main class. Jörg Müller leading in the BMW, Johnny O'Connell second in the Paynos, the number 2 machine. This car, Dindo Capello, the Audi, is in third place in the gathering gloom. Headlights now starting to really make much more of an impression on your TV screens. In fourth place is number 1, David Brabham. Let me tell you what's going on with him. He's 59 seconds behind the next closest car. He's 1 minute and 16 behind the race leader, and he is cutting lap times of 1:42.1. Race leader Jörg Müller, 1:42.6 with a lighter fuel load. Second place Johnny O'Connell, 1:43.7. Dindo Capello doing a 1:45.2, so he's been held up by traffic on that last lap as well. So there is the number 2 car in the number 2 position. Johnny O'Connell took over from Hiroki Kato. Again, you can see that close-up shot there as they come out of Brooklands, sliding around the corner, leaving dark stripes there. These thunderingly torquey V8 motors, the Land Power products now in the machinery. They're being brought in-house there, motor building by the Paynos operation. Last year they had Robert Yates motors. The year before they had Jack Roush motors. Of course, both those engine builders legendary in their ability to wring performance out of Ford's small block V8 in racing terms. Onboard telemetry now showing you the G-forces. Top of the screen, lateral G, left to right, 0 in the middle, and then up to 1.7 as he sweeps through the second part of the Beckett's S's. The slider on the right shows you either acceleration or braking, so in fact the reverse of the G's that the driver is feeling front to rear. And of course speed in miles an hour, none of your weedy kilometers there. When it says 170, it means a proper 170, not something just over 100 miles an hour. So look at the speed here, 145 miles an hour nearly through the Vale as he comes up behind one of the Chamberlain Vipers. Incidentally, Hugh Chamberlain running 3 cars here, 3 in the FIA GT Series, 2 of the same cars in this American Le Mans Series race. The only difference between the cars, I have it on Hugh's authority, they stick a separate number on the door. Their cars 1, 2 and 3 in the FIA Series, they're 61 and 62 here, so they carry the extra weight of an extra decal on the door, but apart from that they are absolutely identical.
So Jörg Müller then still out front there. Jörg Müller, of course, a very, very good history, going way back to winning Monaco Grand Prix in 1991. He won the Macau Grand Prix, Formula 3 in 93, Formula 3000 champion in 96, winner of the Spa 24 Hours in 1996. That was all for BMW. He's always really been a BMW man in recent years, although he did blot his copybook hugely last year. They were leading Petit Le Mans, and with just a few laps to go, he spun the car into the gravel quite inexplicably. It was all made up. He and Lato are talking again now, and of course they came back together just a few weeks ago, won at Charlotte together, and now leading here at Silverstone. But as Martin's been telling you, this fuel equations are really going to spell out the end of the race, how it's going to happen. David Brabham back in 4th place. He's just lost a second. He's gone back 1 second on Müller. He was 1 minute 16 behind. It's now 1:17 behind. He had a much slower lap, or Müller had a very, very fast lap, 1:41.9. I think after the Olive Garden Lola's lap 2, fastest lap of the race at 1:46. That is probably the next fastest lap we've seen here this afternoon, or this evening.
Absolutely right, and Müller now with a clear bit of road ahead of him. Some of the cars chasing are in traffic or catching traffic. As you can see here, the overhead shot of Johnny O'Connell, he's got a pretty close thing to an empty road ahead of him as well. Dindo Capello, though, behind him, getting stuck in traffic. He's nearly half a second slower, almost on a regular basis. Well, here is the 1 car now. This is the one that we're watching with great interest. Apologies really for those of you who aren't dyed-in-the-wool sports car freaks for banging on about this fuel thing, but it is, in the end, going to be very, very important indeed. And I will be doing a great degree of hat eating if it doesn't come down to a last-minute stop for all the others, leaving the Paynos out front. And so too, I'm afraid, will Chris Gawn and the rest of the Paynos team. I think you might be familiar with the name Chris Gawn. His dad, Rick, was here. Rick Gawn, the operations manager of Reynard Racing Cars for so many years, and really Adrian Reynard's right-hand man almost from the word go. Chris, his son, the chief engineer here, and of course the Paynos in its earlier and even so to a degree in its current guise, owing a lot of its heritage to Reynard's design and build. Well, there is confirmation of Jörg Müller's latest best lap, 1:43.534, and there is the young man himself. Jörg married his longtime girlfriend in the closing stages of last season, and as you say, Mark, despite that disastrous gravel trap incident at the Petit Le Mans race, he and JJ still the best of friends. And I talked to JJ actually after Charlotte about that, and he said, you know, it was all a big mistake. JJ believed, having been used to European racing, that as soon as the car was in the gravel, that was it. It was the end of their race. But in fact, they dragged the car out, and Jörg Müller did finish. JJ was not on the podium because he thought the car had been retired or had crashed out, and had no idea that they had actually finished in third place. Well, that is all forgotten, and Jörg Müller will not give in to those kind of fears again. His main worry, though, will be fuel in the closing stages. Join us for that. GT battle at Silverstone being led, as it has been for the greater percentage of the race, by the Bob Wallach and Sascha Maas and Dick Barber Racing Porsche. Randy Popp still holding down second place for Alex Job Racing. Kurt Wagner, the reigning GT champion, in third place in the MCR Aspen Knowles car that he shares with Shane Lewis. And in fourth place, the car that everybody perhaps expected to run away with the GT lead. That's Dick Barber's 5 car. Dirk Müller and Lucas Luhr, no doubt about it. They're the young hotshots in GT, Porsche factory drivers both. But they had a puncture early on, and that's the kind of handicap that even the youngest, brightest, most risk-taking drivers have a trouble struggling back against. Sascha Maas at the wheel of the 51 car, hugely experienced, and Bob Wallach even more so. Brilliant Bob. A string of second place and other top finishes at Le Mans. Perhaps a man destined never to win the greatest motor race in the world. Well, that's perhaps second-guessing everything. Here is the GT-S class leader, the 91 car, Olivier Barretta, once more behind the wheel. He took the car back from Carl Wendlinger about 20 minutes ago in what I think will probably turn out to be their final pit stop. They lead from their teammates. David Donoghue at the wheel of the 92 car. Stefan Otelli in third place, the best placed Porsche. Jürgen von Gartzen Jr., that is, son of the famous, in fourth place in their class. And in fifth place, Zach Brown in the 08 car. That's the best of the Rook Motorsport cars. He shares that with Hubert Haupt and Vic Rice. But it's once more Chrysler stroke Dodge Viper domination of the GTS class. And it's red cars nose to tail, because we have got the Viper leading the GTS class, being passed by the car that we expect to perform fairly well in the closing stages of the race. David Brabham is currently in fourth place in the number 1 car. Jörg Müller ahead of him, so too Johnny O'Connell, his teammate, so too Dindo Capello in the third place Audi. And the reason that the Benos is further back is because he went for a fuel strategy in the race, whereas the other 5 cars in contention in the prototype class all decided to come in earlier on in the race during a yellow flag incident that occurred around lap 23. The safety car was scrambled to recover 2 cars from the gravel traps on the outside of the very fast bridge corner. Now, one of the drivers involved in that incident is with us, Belgian driver Mark Goossens from the Dams Motorola Cadillac team. Welcome, Mark. Disappointing to see you here. We saw your car and that of Bill Orbelan in the gravel. We didn't pick up on the cameras the incident, but we suspect that perhaps there may have been a touch between the two of you. What was the story?
Well, not really. We didn't actually hit each other, but I was closing in on the BMW quite strongly, and turning into bridge, he lost control of the car and spun it backwards into the gravel. Trying to avoid him, I hit the brakes as well, and that was it. Ended up in the gravel at the same time with him.
Well, that's a dreadful shame. He came out of the gravel quicker than you did as well, so he obviously, as he went in sideways, was going in slower than you going in out head on. He in fact had a puncture on the left rear when he went back to the pit, so maybe that was what caused the problem. But so you were the innocent victim of that problem. Now, the car came back and back into the pits. Tell us, what was the damage? Why was the car then out of the race?
Well, to start with, when we had that spin, we didn't do any damage. So he came in, just put another set of tires on and went for a different team strategy. And basically it was all running well then until I came out of the last corner here of the complex back on the pit straight. I just hit the throttle and ended up having a massive wheel spin on the left-hand side. So there must be some problem with the rear end, but we're still working out what it was.
Okay, so disappointment then. Both the Cadillac cars, you think first of all, about the handling, the chassis itself, are you comfortable now, the team, with the car, or do you think you still want to do some more work before you get to France?
Well, definitely the team is working very professionally on the car. We all know that on all the levels, chassis, engine, tires, we need to do a lot of development on it. But I think we're making progress in the whole program, and I think everybody's putting the right effort into to make it as competitive as possible. But we have to be honest. I mean, at the moment we're a little bit behind on performance, but I think we can save a lot on the reliability of the car.
It's been a long time since Cadillac raced at Le Mans, over 40 years, and this is a brand new venture for the factory. Probably nobody working there even remembers Briggs Cunningham's Cadillacs at Le Mans, and certainly drivers like yourself, your dad may have watched it or read about it in the newspapers, but you weren't even born. The Dams team, though, a huge amount of experience there, so that's obviously where all the experience is coming from. How different is it for a driver to have a brand new car right from the ground up, where you have to just work on everything at the same time?
Well, it is different than jumping into a car that's already at the top. But then again, staying at the top is as difficult than getting there, I think. But I think we've got a very good, squad of drivers in the team. Obviously, the team is working very professionally. And, as long as everybody understands that, we're in a development period of time, then I think we can all, get together and get the best result possible. But, like you said, it's obviously important to have the right people with the right experience behind the whole project.
Just watching your teammates on the screen here, where you would like to be, I guess, out on the racetrack. The most important thing, I'm sure, for this race, for everybody, is to get as many miles on the car as possible. Just see the 31 car there. You're in 6th position at the moment, but going a lap down to this ferocious battle between the two Audis for supremacy. Of course, everything now is, the more miles you do, the better the car works, the more you learn how to set it up, and the more problems you can find and get rid of before everybody's target, which of course is getting to Le Mans.
Well, it's true. I mean, we're trying to make it a car as easy as possible to drive, working on the comfort, at the same time working on the performance as well. But like I said before, I think the main target for us is to be reliable, and like it shows today. I mean, when I was still on the circuit, we were lapping, a little bit ahead of our 31 car of Manu and Eric. And that's the thing. The car that runs longest gets to the points. That's it basically. That's endurance racing.
Well, that's it. To be there at the end is the most important thing for you guys. Listen, Mark, thank you very much for making a long trek from the pits back up here to talk to us. It's been a pleasure, and we wish you very best of luck yourselves and all the Dams Cadillac team back at Le Mans. Thank you very much indeed to Mark Goossens. There's the number 2 Paynos stopping from 2nd place. Johnny O'Connell at the helm of the number 2 machine for its pit stop. Don't forget that car came in before we saw the safety car period for the incident which involved my guest here, Mark Goossens, and also the BMW of Bill Auberlen. So that was off the fuel schedule anyway. They will drop down now from 2nd position. The 2 Audis, nose to tail, line astern. Dindo Capello in 3rd place, the 77 car. In fact, Frank Bieler, rather mistakenly said, was battling him for position. I think perhaps they are now running strongly together to try and bolster each other's chances in traffic. But still, Jörg Müller leads the race. 81 laps he's done now. It's a 98 lap distance. He's just finished, in fact, lap 82 as I speak. He's gone across the line. There's Dindo Capello and Frank Bieler in the 78 car coming through heavy traffic in the complex. But 82 laps, he's got another 17 to go, and I don't think he's going to make it on fuel. I don't think the number 2 car will be in the race lead either. I don't think the 3rd placed 77 car of Dindo Capello will be there either. I think that the number 1 car of David Brabham, which is in 4th place at the moment and a minute 23 behind Jörg Müller, is the one that is most likely to shuffle itself to the top of the pack. Well, Mark, we are in the closing stage of this race now, and this, I'm sure, is where, more than at any other stage, the teams will be poring over the data coming back from the cars, over their laptops, over their fuel readouts, seeing how much weight of fuel they've got left in the car versus the consumption versus the number of laps, because it is a lap distance. We're now at 2 hours and 26 minutes into this race. There is no way we're going to run to the full 3-hour duration unless the heavens open and there are no clouds in sight for that to happen. So again, we come down to chewing fingernails.
Yeah, I think David
on the pit wall.
I think David Bratton's already taken this to heart. He has been running 144s regularly over the last 7 or 8 laps, so he's obviously running to a fuel formula now. That's quite obvious. He knows the 3 cars ahead of him are all stopping or had to stop, but Bratton hasn't been that quick, as we said. You know, it's a fuel thing for him now. 125, 85 seconds now back from Muller, who has yet to stop. O'Connell is only just ahead of him, 9 seconds ahead, so we know how long it takes now to get in and out of the pit. He closed that gap down by about a minute. So can he do it? Can he claw back that 85 seconds on Muller, even though Muller's got to stop, Capello's got to stop, and this is what's going to be fascinating.
Well, as you say, just 9.9 seconds at the line last time between Johnny O'Connell, the 3rd place man in the number 2 Paynos, and David Bratton, the 4th placed man in the number 1 Paynos. But the question is, and I can't remember honestly whether the Paynos number 2 had left the pits or not at that stage, whether the Paynos was stationary and Bratton caught him up as he was leading, or whether they are running nose to tail around the circle. We're going to have to look out of the window because the cameras aren't following them at the moment. Here is the Dams Cadillac pit, and here comes the 31 car. Eric Bernard and his teammate Manuel Collard have done a good job in this car. It's exactly what the team had wanted, and exactly what Mark Goossens would have hoped to have done as well, which is get it to the end. Do 98 laps in 2 cars rather than any lesser number, and that gives you as much possible data to take away and to study. Well, if nothing else, the 32 car has at least highlighted another potential weakness in the Dams Cadillac, and that is, I suppose, a disappointment not to finish the race, but important that they discover it in this shakedown race rather than, let's say, 2 hours into the 24 hours of Le Mans, which of course is a slightly bigger target for them. So there you see the 2 Vipers sliding around, ablaze with lights at the front, the 91 car and the 92 machine. And it is the 91 car which is in 8th position overall, leading the GTS class and just about to put a lap on the 92 car. The yellow helmet is David Donahue. The yellow helmet in the other car, there he is Olivier Beretta, the Frenchman. Very similar helmet colours, the two of them. Very different driving styles, and David Donahue certainly coming later to the Orica team than Beretta, who has been with it really from the outset of this Viper program, getting on for nearly a decade now that we've been seeing Vipers racing. It doesn't quite feel like it, but it certainly is. Very late upshift there by Frank Wheeler, the 5th place Audi, the 78 car, short shifting now, using almost no revs as he came past our commentary position before the start-finish line. Now, whether that is indicative of small problem for the car or whether he is now definitely trying to save fuel, I'm not sure. The 69 machine, the Kaiser Racing Porsche of Kai Wankum and Greg Doff, the 2 Canadians, slowly trickling towards the pits. They are one of the last running cars. They are some 20 laps down on the leaders and a long way off the GT class. There is the GTS battle.
So this has really been another absolute perfect picture book race for the Oreca team. This will be their last Le Mans with these cars. They're building their own sports prototype for the future, and these cars we pensioned off. There's been tremendous privateer customer cars as well, but Oreca have really set one of the standards of racing, and these cars have probably now gone into the history books as maybe the most winning cars in the history of sports car racing, even more than the famous Porsche 956, 962 model of the Group C days. Really impressive that they have, in a way, spoiled the racing, because the car's been so dominant, been so good, that people have wanted to buy them rather than look elsewhere. You know, TVR have never really come up with the car they promised us. Marcos have never quite made the grade with the new car, and other cars we were hoping to see a lot of variety in the FIA GT Championship has been rather overshadowed by the Viper. It's a out-of-the-box car you can buy and turn the key and go racing, and that and the Porsches have dominated that series. But anyway, here we are back with our race leader. It's Jörg Müller, lap 85 of 98 laps. So Getting to the last 13 laps of the race now. Muller must be having all sorts of thoughts, knowing he's going to have to make a splash and dash again, and he's got to get it absolutely right.
Well, the number 2 and number 1 Paynos crossed the line a while ago in 3rd and 4th place. O'Connell is still ahead of Brabham, but the gap is closing. 8.8 it was last time out, 9.9 the previous lap. So David Brabham, perhaps not surprisingly, quicker than Johnny O'Connell. Now they should both have. O'Connell definitely has. Brabham should have enough fuel to run to the end of the race. But as I said earlier on, possibly that spin by Hiroki Kato and the subsequent out-of-schedule fuel run of the number 2 Paynos, you never know. These things sometimes end up handing a race to you. And at the moment, Brabham marginal on fuel, O'Connell with plenty to go. The 2 Paynos may be battling for the lead in the closing. Jörg Müller leads the Silverstone 500 for BMW. In second place, the Audi of Dindo Capello, 30 seconds further back. In third and fourth places, the 2 Paynos, number 2 car, Johnny O'Connell, 8 seconds ahead of David Brabham in car number 1. Now the question is, O'Connell we know can make it. He's already made a last late stop fuel fill-up. David Brabham, we think, may be able to stretch it to the end of the race on what he's got, but we believe neither Muller in the 42 BMW nor Dindo Capello in the 77 Audi can make it to the end. They may yet prove us wrong, Mark Cole. 87 laps completed, now coming round to complete the end of lap 88 is Jörg Müller, 10 to go. Well, they stopped 10 laps early because of a yellow flag incident, and that means that they can't go to the end of the race. Jörg Müller at least heads off into the pits. And thank you very much indeed for doing that. The race leader comes down the pit lane. There you go, the last 3 hours of postulating have come to fruition. But now very nervous times indeed for particularly the crew of the number 1 Paynos, because their car is behind their teammate in the number 2 car, which they know for certain has got enough fuel to go to the end. Question is for Müller, how long will the fuel be going in? 6, 7, 8, nearly 10 seconds worth of fuel there.
He waved away the tyre man, you noticed. They wanted to put tyres on, perhaps. He waved them away, said no. Now, he came into the pit 75 seconds ahead of O'Connell and Brabham, who really are his most feared opponents there. Has he got out ahead of? We're going to find out in just a moment.
Well, here is the second place car, Dindo Capello. Through the Beckett's S's, he sweeps. Or am I miscalling it? Dindo Capello certainly on, there it was, Beckett's on the hanger straight now, coming towards the pits. He stopped at the same time as the BMW, and that tells us at least something, that the 77 car of Capello and McNish has been better on fuel than the 42 car of Muller and Leto. But with 10 remaining, 9 at the end of this lap for the race leader, can Capello stay out there? Answer, I don't think he can. Time will prove it to us perhaps, or not. Johnny O'Connell in second place, David Brabham in third. Beg your pardon, third and fourth as they are on the timing monitors. We wait to see how they are when Jörg Müller comes across the line again, but this may yet prove to be a very dramatic race to the flag. Dindo Capello coming through the stadium section at Silverstone, into Priory, into Brooklands, down into second gear, pouring on the power, and then into the right-hander at Luffield. Seemingly endless this corner. Waiting, now nailing the throttle as he pulls out, right out onto the grass, just as Alan McNish was doing earlier on. He goes past the pits again, eschewing another fuel stop. Well, we're waiting now for Jörg Müller to come past. Dindo Capello is the new race leader. His teammate comes past us now ahead of Jörg Müller, the 78 car, which is a lap down in 5th place. Frank Bieler comes past us ahead of Jörg Müller. And he will obviously be a very wide Audi for Jörg Müller to pass, but Müller has gone into the pits and come back out in second place. He's 9.4 behind Capello, but he is, importantly, 44 seconds ahead of O'Connell and a further 7.5 seconds ahead of Brabham. So BMW coming in early and making a late race splash and dash, still in second place. Audi yet to stop. The question is, can the Audi get out ahead of Müller? Contrary to what I've been expecting to happen for the last 2 hours, it looks as though Paynos may not pull this one off on fuel strategy alone.
Yeah, it really seems to have gone a bit a bit pear-shaped from right at the end. It looked so strong for Brabham early in the race, and everything, all the cards fell in his favour. That 3 laps behind the safety car, he made all the right calls. The team got him in just when they said they would. He gained those extra laps, and yet here he is. He's making no impression at all on Johnny O'Connell now. 7.7 seconds the gap between those two. I'm very surprised. He's running 1:43s at the moment, not making any impression on O'Connell. Okay, we've said maybe he's trying to conserve fuel a little bit, but he shouldn't be conserving quite that much, surely, Martin.
Well, I think he may be in desperate straits in terms of fuel, because it was always going to be nip and tuck. There is the GTS class leader going back out under the lights from the pits. The headlamps now clearly making their mark on the road as we get towards 20 minutes to 9. 9 o'clock the maximum cut-off point, but we're just 7 laps now as the leader comes into the pits. No, he doesn't, goes across the line. Sorry, the other Audi, the 78 car, a lap down in 5th place of Frank Bieler, comes into the pits, giving me momentary confusion. Dindo Capello continues. He cannot surely go all the way, but when you are gambling this deep in the hole, you stay out there until the very last second, hoping against hope that somebody will put it off on the tired brain or tired car and give you the yellow flag that you need to save time on your desperate late race pit stop. Well, the 91 Olivier Beretta Carl Bendinger Viper came in for its late race stop, but since it's comfortably ahead of its teammate David Donoghue and machine, the number 92 machine, and with no chance of being passed by them, that was no drama for the GTS class leaders. Similarly, Sasha Masson and Bob Wallick's car leading the GT class comfortably from the Porsche of Randy Pobst, and the 3rd placed car, the Porsche of Kurt Wagner. But how long can Capello stay out? This is gripping stuff in the final 10 here at Silverstone.
Now remember, Martin, that this car is run by Reinhold Jost. Reinhold Jost is famous for his fuel tactics over the years. Reinhold Jost, he won so many Le Mans races, 4 Le Mans wins, all in a number 7 Porsches. This car's 77 in honour of that. So
well, there you go, yes.
Won in 84 and 85, 96 and 97, all back to back, and got that 77 number on. Great races already this year. He's had 1st and 2nd at Sebring with the Le Mans cars, as we said, 6th and 20th at Charlotte with this car. They just could not get it to work there. But look at this, against all expectations, the wily old Fox, the man from Cologne, is pulling it off at the moment. Remember, this Audi's turbocharged, so they've got to be a little bit more circumspect with the fuel than the normally aspirated cars. 3.6 litres turbo, Audi V8, and looking very, very good now. But well, Martin, I'm feeling like you. They must stop, surely.
Well, we know they will. We've just seen the Audi team in the pits, and no doubting Dindo Capello's hand signal there, was it, as he came towards us down the pit straight, arm out of the cockpit, jabbing feverishly in the direction of the pit wall. I think that may well mean, without the use of a radio, I'm coming in. Whatever you do now, guys, in the Jost team, don't mess up my pit stop. So Dindo Capello in this 92nd lap of 98 here to make up this 500-kilometre race distance at Silverstone, enjoying his last moments as race leader. He currently has just 10 seconds in hand over the BMW of Jörg Müller. We should see his headlamps, if we pull back on this shot, fairly close behind. So Capello leading, but this is really his swan song as race leader. Into bridge as race leader, I expect, for the final time. Down the gearbox he comes, hard on the brakes, into Brooklands, short squirt on the throttle, back down the gearbox again. Those carbon discs and their carbon pads glowing cherry red as he goes now right into Luffield, and surely now hanging sharp right into the pits. The race leader heads for fuel and finishing the race. Question now is, can he do it in 2nd place? Because surely Jörg Müller will pass him, probably even before he comes to a halt. Capello now on the speed limiter. Jörg Müller at full throttle, coming out of the final turn. Across the line he goes. Now he's about 30 feet behind Capello. Now he's passed him. Jörg Müller leads. Capello pulls to a halt. The Audi fuel hoses go in. They've got 6 laps to go. Look at him, he's jiggling up and down in the seat, going, come on, come on, come on, now, now, now. Every second must be killing him. Away he goes. Don't stall it, Dindo. He stalled it. Another couple of seconds, more. He's got the engine back. Oh, what a disastrous time for Capello. Every single second will count, because as he exits the pits at full speed, Johnny O'Connell comes over the line. Capello is already out of the pit limiter range. He's coming out of the pit lane. Where is the Paynos? Where is the Audi? We don't want to see the BMW now. This is the race leader, Jörg Müller, but the drag race down behind him to Beckett's is what we want to see. It's the slower Paynos, the number 2 Paynos rather, at speed, and the slower Audi drag racing down to Beckett's that we want to see. Let's hope that the cameras drop back to see that battle, because that is what will decide second place, surely. O'Connell coming up with stunning momentum behind Dindo Capello in the Audi. This is our race leader. Jörg Müller leads by some 30 seconds over the battle for second place, and by some 40 nearly over the man who is currently in 4th place and probably will remain there, David Brabham, in the number 1 Paynos. Well, Mark, closing stages, 5 laps to go at the end of this one. Again, seeing the BMW, but that's not the interest right now. It's almost inconceivable that the BMW will drop this one at this late stage. What we really want to see is the battle for second place.
Yeah, as you said, these races have a habit of coming to a dramatic conclusion, very dramatic at the moment. We're just waiting for Müller now to come across the line. In fact, he's just gone across the line, waiting to see how far behind Capello is. Has he held his second place ahead of O'Connell and Brabham? Brabham closing right up now, 6 seconds between himself and O'Connell, but he's left it all too late. He is driving on fuel.
O'Connell in second place in the middle of the complex. O'Connell is just 2 car lengths ahead of Dindo Capello. The cameras aren't showing you this, but he comes now to a big swarm of GT cars. He gets past safely. Capello docking around behind them, trying to get through. David Brabham is half a pit straight behind. Brabham is not going to be a factor in this battle for second place, because I don't think he's got the fuel enough for the pace to join in on that battle. Jörg Müller still leads quite comfortably. He's got slower cars ahead of him, but that shouldn't worry him. He's got 33 seconds advantage over Johnny O'Connell. Second place for the number 2 Paynos. BMW may yet pull this one out of the hat in the overall race honours. The prototype BMW, last year's Williams-built V12 LM, the car that raced so successfully at Le Mans and Sebring in '99, now in 2000 looking like tying up victory at Silverstone. And just 5 laps to go at the end, 4 laps to go at the end of this one for Jörg Müller.
And indeed, for him, it'll be a 3rd American Le Mans Series win if he can pull it off. He won Sebring last year with JJ Leto and Tom Christensen. He then won Charlotte just a few weeks ago, and they used the combined banking and road course. So Jörg Müller really repaying that disaster at Petit Le Mans last year in full. It looks like win number 2 coming up for BMW, and bizarrely, the only team here that won't be running until we've got a BMW off right in front of us.
We have Team PCG car, the number 10 machine that was leading BMW in the GT class. It was down in 6th place in class, but it has run out of road. That's the Cunninghams, Peter and Brian Cunningham, the brand new M3 machine. There it is. And that car is off the road. So
Swedish driver Nick Johnson on board, and he will not be popular with the Cunninghams.
No, he won't indeed. But looking by the tyre marks, there is one single black stripe across the road onto the grass there, and I would have to say that is a car failure. That is probably unlikely to be a driver error, because he was hard up on the inside line, and that's not where all the rubber marbles are. Now, finally, a little too late, I'm afraid to say, the director gets back to the battle for second place. This is the 2 car of Johnny O'Connell. The headlights right behind him, Dindo Capello. Yellow flags out of the final corner on the pit straight, so no passing out of Luffield and across the line. Now the leader has done 94 laps. Jörg Müller on lap 95 of 98. Johnny O'Connell in second place, and I don't think likely to surrender that to Dindo Capello. He is starting to ease away. 1.3 ahead of the line, and that looks like more than 1.3 to me. 4th place is David Brabham. So at the moment it's BMW, Paynos, Audi, and then Paynos. The 5th place car is the 78 Audi of Frank Bieler, a lap down on the leader. And in 6th place, the 31 machine, that's Emmanuel Collard in the Motorola Dams Cadillac that he shares with Eric Bernard. So it looks as though they're going to make it to the line in the top half dozen.
And of course, this is where European rules have played straight into BMW's hand. If this had been in America, we'd have the safety car out now, full course yellow, with that crashed BMW on the pit straight. It's not though. We're running to local flags here, and that really has given Muller the chance now to claim this race. What a great victory that is going to be for them. We've just seen David Donahue going into the pits, the splash and dash for the second placed GTS driver in the Eureka Viper. He's on the same lap as Beretta. He was on the same lap as Beretta. When he rejoins, he'll presumably fall down a lap again. And Stefano Ortelli still there in third place, as we see some very tricky passing moves. Capello having a big problem with one of the Chamberlain Vipers there.
Yeah, Capello really hasn't had the brakes in traffic just when he needed them most, and Johnny O'Connell in the 2 car again easing away from him. 26 seconds Jörg Muller's advantage at the end of last lap, which was lap 95 of 98, don't forget. Well, less than 3 laps remaining now, 2 at the end of this one for the race leader. Here come the glaring headlights of the number 2 Paynos. There is the Audi in third place. The Paynos is in second, but Capello with the brake discs aglow at the end of the ultra-fast hangar straight as he goes into Stowe. Really now, I'm sure, wishing for something to happen to the car ahead of him, because there's not much is going to happen in his car that will help him. Bounces over the curbs, exiting the Vale. Power on now as they go through Club Corner and heading on the fast run up towards Abbey. But he does need a break, and it needs to be a break somewhere on the number 2 Paynos. Oh, there'll be wishing trouble on the number 2 car on his behalf, but you can't blame him for doing that. The 2 car in traffic as they come through Bridge, and that is the sort of thing that can cause problems. Bridge is a fast and daunting enough corner without slower cars to zigzag through. There's the 5 car, Dirk Muller and Lucas Loos GT Porsche. Early puncture has left them well down the order. They are 1, 2, 3, 4th in the GT class. It won't be a podium finish for them. Their teammates, the 51 Dick Barber car, still leading and in sight of the flag. Battle for second place, crosses the line at the end of lap 96. On to lap 97, 2 more laps to go.
And we're just about going to make it a night race, Martin. We've been talking for some time about Silverstone's first ever night race. It has stayed very cloud-free tonight. The sun has sunk now, but cars are on headlights, but it's actually a little bit darker than it looks on your screens at the moment here. Although I've been here at Group C races in the 80s in the rain when it's gone into real darkness.
At lunchtime.
6 o'clock in the evening.
Absolutely right.
So lap 96, off at 98.
A lap and a half to go for Jörg Muller. The race leader for BMW, the number 42 car, has outfumbled the Paynos team on fuel. They had hoped that the number 1 car, by sticking to its fuel schedule, would be right there at the end of the race, in front of everybody who stopped early under the yellow flag on lap 23, including the BMWs and the Audis. But it's the 42 car of JJ Leto and Jörg Muller, which has combined speed and paucity of fuel use best to head this race into the final lap. And it's been a nerve-wracking last 2 hours of this race since that early yellow flag situation, not just for the Paynos team but also for Charlie Lamb's Schnitzer crew. He's now on his final lap, is Jörg Muller, and no repeats undoubtedly of the Petit Le Mans problem for him. Jörg Muller will guide his BMW V12LM all the way to the checkered flag with very steely nerve. Johnny O'Connell in second place from Dindo Capello. It's Paynos second, Audi in third place. David Brabham, the man who hoped against hope that the race would come to him on fuel strategy alone, has gone into third place as Dindo Capello comes down pit road. The Audi from third place coming back into the pits with a puncture or a broken rear upright on the final lap. What a disaster for Dindo Capello and Alan McNish. No podium finish for them. So Brabham moves up into third place. O'Connell is in second place. Jörg Muller leads around the final lap here at Silverstone. Mark, sports car racing dull? I don't think so.
Well, it's the Dom Paynos hex, of course, put on the Audi, isn't it? And not dull, no. Look at this, the BMW out front. This is not what all the Rover owners in the crowd wanted to see this afternoon, one has to say, this evening. But look at this, here he comes, Jörg Muller. He's just got a few more 100 metres of Northamptonshire to do, and then he's going to claim a famous victory. That'll make it 2 out of 2 this year. And behind him, Bob Warlick, Sasha Masson will also make it 2 out of 2, but for Beretta and Wendlinger, 3 out of 3 victories in GTS, and that is such a good record to start the new millennium on.
Well, starting as they left off in the last century, the Orica Viper team, but here through the final couple of corners around Luffield for the last time, the checkered flag is being readied at the end of lap 98 for Jörg Muller and BMW. And as you say, Mark, a famous victory at Silverstone. 50 years to the day since the first ever British Grand Prix in the modern World Championship era. 1950, the 13th of May 1950, again a Saturday. Don't think it was this dark, but Jörg Müller wins. And again, drama for the second Audi out on the racetrack, and that is smoke pouring from the back of, it must be Frank Wieler's 78 car, because the 77 car is in the pits. Or did they send him back out? They sent him back out. Get out again and go round. You can see him weaving there under braking as the wheel is flying around. Yeah. He went into the pits and they just sent him off. He's got a puncture now as well as a loose rear wheel. It's not just the tyre though. Look at that wheel. It's all over the place. Dindo Capello is getting on with it. What a soldier he is. Oh, fantastic pictures of Dindo Capello, determined not to finish this race in the pits. Well, heartbreak for the Audi driver, who 10 laps ago was looking at second place and now is sliding down the order. He's in fourth place at the moment, but still ahead of his teammates.
Here's our GTS winner. Oh, and we've got a problem there for the Panos as he crossed the line, and he's crossed the line, hasn't he? Yep.
The number 2 car of Johnny O'Connell was in second place, but at the end of lap 98 it was David Brabham that was shown in second in our delight of what's else going on. But here I think we can probably safely say, with at least some hope of being right, the 91 car is going to win the GTS class. Olivier Beretta and Carl Wendlinger. 'Twas ever thus.
So what happened to Johnny Connell? What happened there? And
could it be, Mark, in that late race pit stop that they didn't put enough fuel in to make it to the end? I don't know. Dindo Capello comes across the line smoking, and there is surely not much left on the left rear. If he doesn't pull off in the next corner, the car is going to do pulling off all of its own accord. The 51 car comes across the line, flashing its headlamps. That was the GT class winner, Sasha Masson and Bob Wallach for Dick Barber Racing. Yeah, Capello is going to pull up by the pit wall. He's been dangerous enough for the last lap. I think he's had enough of that. Time to get out of the wreckage and climb over and talk to the Audi team.
What a super return though for Dick Barber Racing. That's worth noting. This is their third victory in the 3 races. There we are. Let's see again at that.
Well, no, that's
a donut.
Celebratory wheel spin starts from Jörg Müller, the race winner. Well, he definitely did win overall and in the prototype class, unless, of course, you know different at home, in which case, please phone us now. David Brabham in second place. Dindo Capello, despite what was left of his Audi, not being very happy about it, taking third. Delight there, Jörg Müller's wife on the left-hand side of the shot. And she was the one who was first to the car in Parc Fermé after Petit Le Mans last year to console him. He was in fits of despair, and it was her who was there, his strength to get him onto the podium, and now I'm sure she will be absolutely thrilled and delighted to welcome him from the victory podium, the top step here in Silverstone. Jörg Müller at a halt then, and we will try and get a word with him before we go off air here at Silverstone. The BMW team then, well, JJ Leto gives him the congratulations that they both so richly deserve. So too Charlie Lamb's whole Schnitzer operation. A really fine race. They put themselves deep in a hole with that early pit stop. They've made it work for them somehow. David Brabham in second place at the line in the Panos. Third place, Dindo Capello, but really it should have been Capello, O'Connell, and then Brabham. GTS victory, the 91 car, and the moon is out. So it's officially night time now. We don't have a light on top of the timing tower like they do at Le Mans. We have a moon instead here at Silverstone. So the GTS class then goes to the Orica Viper of Beretta. And,
very happy, you know. It's we didn't really expect this, you know, in the beginning of the race. So, you know, we had so many problems this weekend, but the whole team was working very hard. And, you know, we got the car a little bit better this morning. We still changed the car, you know, after the practice, you know, and we took a little risk, or gamble, you know, for the race, but it was paying back. Very happy. Thank you.
Well, JJ Leto clearly delighted, Jörg Müller likewise, and as JJ was referring to there, Mark, they really had dreadful problems finding a balance on this car, making it work in qualifying. They couldn't figure out why it was slow in practice, why it was still slow in qualifying. They took a bit of a chance, and you know, when you're in a hole you have to do that, and clearly their chance and their fuel strategy have managed to keep them ahead of the rest of the field. Brabham half a minute behind, but really not in it because of the way the fuel thing panned out. But still, good result in second place, great result in third place for Capello, but only because of this car failing on the final lap. Johnny O'Connell, cameras didn't pick up why he stopped, just that he had stopped. Classified in 4th place though, because Frank Beeler was already a lap down. So the number 2, Paynos, in 4th place. Beeler in 5th and Collard in 6th position. The final stint with Eric Bernard in the Motorola Dams Cadillac. So that's the top 6 in the overall class. As I said, Beretta, Wendlinger ahead of Donahue and Archer. It's an Orica Viper 1-2 in the GTS class. Stefan Ortelli in 3rd place in the GTS class. In the Freisinger Porsche, he shared with Manfred Kaufmann. And in the GT class, just to finalise it, the 51 car of Sascha Maassen and Bob Wallach beating Randy Pobst in the 23 car that he shared with Bruno Lambert, the Alex Job racing car. And reigning champion Kurt Wagner in the 21 car, the MCR Porsche that he shared with Shane Lewis, coming home in 3rd place.
So that's the 6th Le Mans Series victory for JJ Later. Really puts him right on top of the tree. Would have been champion last year, but for a registration problem at Sebring. They won Sebring, which was the most loaded race in points last year, but he wasn't officially registered for the championship. So he lost out there to Elliot Forth, Robinson, Bernard and Brabham. Coming back to the vengeance this year though, that's 2 out of 3 races he and Jörg Müller have won together, and surely this really does underline what a good decision BMW North America made in requesting the cars continue racing. We're going to see them once more this year in Europe, Nürburgring in July, but then they'll be back to America, and that is probably the last time we'll see them in Europe.
Well, unless of course you are watching at home, in which case you will be able to see all of the American Le Mans Series races, courtesy of our American colleagues, our TV production crew there. So you will be able to see them all the action, edited highlights throughout the rest of the series. But as you say, Mark, chance to go and watch them at the Nürburgring. Of course, they are missing out on Le Mans this year as BMW really concentrates all of its European efforts in the Formula One programme. And that is certainly proving, at least at the moment, in terms of Formula One, to be a good decision. But as you say, I'm sure the American BMW arm very happy indeed with their success in persuading the Munich firm to continue to run these cars. A year old they may be, outclassed and off the pace, certainly not.
How about putting Jenson Button in one of these? That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I don't think Jenson would like that very much. I'm sure he'd much happier drive alongside Ralf Schumacher in Formula One, but yes, certainly we would be delighted to see that in terms of British fans watching some British drivers here. But of course, Alan McNish and David Brabham, McNish a Scot, a true British driver. Brabham, an honorary adopted one, I think. He's lived here so long. We'll adopt anybody, we don't care. In fact, we'd probably adopt JJ Lato, who's been such a favourite with the British fans over the years. So Lato and Muller come onto the top step of the podium then. The P-Class, the prototypes, the big banger sports cars, call them what you like. Open-top endurance racing at its best. David Brabham there with his teammate Jan Magnussen in the red overalls in 2nd place. And there's the Audi pair. Dindo Capello, his fillings rattled loose, his eyeballs still, I'm sure, not quite connected after driving around those last couple of laps in the 77 car, and his teammate Alan McNish. So it's victory for BMW. We now wait for the national anthems.
Someone investigating the racing lines there, going down towards Copse, but darkness really falling now, and
certainly be dark by the time he finishes his lap.
I have to say though, the crowd unexpectedly big. Over 2 days of qualifying, looked very, very small, but then suddenly, just before the start of this race, they came pouring in their thousands.
Well, of course, free practice on Thursday, bitterly cold, very windy. Qualifying on Friday, pretty cold as well, and working days for everybody, including ourselves, obviously, although not too strenuous for us. But Saturday, it's the weekend, the race didn't start till 6 in the evening, so plenty of time to get the household duties, the shopping and everything done by lunchtime, still make it to the racetrack in time to touch, and a very good choice indeed for every single one of you who's sitting at home tuned in, or who made it to Silverstone to watch what turned out to be a fabulous race. Again, the American Le Mans Series producing a barn-storming finale, never short of drama. Well, that's it. The trophies for JJ Lato and Jörg Müller, 2 each for victory at Silverstone. BMW does it once more. Well, thank you very much indeed for being with us throughout the Silverstone 500 USA Challenge. Thank you again to our guests who came up to join us in the booth, and especially, of course, thank you to Mark Cole. Mark, another great race here in the American Le Mans Series, and with the darkness falling and the lights on, really just makes you feel ready for Le Mans already.
Yeah, they're a great race, as you say. More to come tomorrow, FIA GT Championship. That'll be shown on Eurosport next week. Stay with us.